Anyone who has the capacity to conquer the nightmare of schizophrenia has every absolute right to blow their own trumpet and speak out about such. And if that can help and inspire others looking for hope and survival, then that is a good thing.
Any illness prevents us from being who and what we truly are. Schizophrenia is an illness, not a person. Hello everyone, my name is Spencer. I have recovered from schizophrenia, and for many years now I have lived symptom-free and side-effect-free from the illness. This is my second public appearance, and I feel just as nervous and exposed as the first. However, I will still do my best to give you an interesting and inspiring presentation. I'm here today to represent those of us who are the unsung success stories of mental illness, those of us who have regained our normal self and now live healthy, regular lives. To start with, I will give you a bit of insight into my experience with the illness, and then I would like to touch upon my areas of interest, the holistic and transpersonal areas of psychosis.
Having had a conference speech forwarded on to Steven Spielberg and just recently had his autobiography published, this talented artist is living proof that people contending with mental illness can fully recover from the nightmare and go on to participate in life just as competently and normal as the rest of us. Spencer Perdriau is a real-life success story of triumph over tragedy. Having fully recovered from schizophrenia, he has reclaimed his well-being and has enjoyed normal, regular health for many years now, symptom-free and side-effect-free from any relapse trace of the illness. Since his recovery, he has devoted the last 7 years to writing in the field of transpersonal psychology, focusing on personal experience about the subjective nature of mind and consciousness. Spencer's work also complements the ancient wisdoms from both Eastern and Western traditions to his new, insightful approaches to mental well-being. Having written numerous books awaiting publication, his very first work was passed on to a major figure in the self-development industry who generously approved of his unique insights about the essence and ultimate nature of reality. Now, 7 years on, Spencer's knowledge and wisdom has been endorsed by a close friend of the Dalai Lama, and he is finally having his work recognized under his own name in published form in the book, Awakening the Spirit, Inspiring the Soul. The book, launched in July 2004 at the Parliament of the World's Religions Conference in Barcelona, features 30 mini-spiritual autobiographies, of which his is one. The book tells of various inspiring individuals from many walks of life, cultures and faiths, whose lives exemplify triumph over tragedy. Spencer has also produced numerous audio CDs and various DVD presentations of his educational material and artwork. On his 30th birthday, 24th of October 2002, Spencer embarked on the public speaking circuit in the mental health industry, focusing on issues regarding holistic ethics, human rights and equality. His initial presentation, Holistic Ethics for Psychosis, presented at the Australasian Schizophrenia Conference, captured an audience of 400 international guests consisting of doctors, psychiatrists, scientists, distinguished members of society, and families concerned with mental health and well-being. In February 2003, Spencer then attended the World Federation for Mental Health Biennial Congress, held at the Melbourne Convention Centre, where he gave the same speech in extended detail, along with a vibrant poster display to accompany his message. After his success at the Biennial Congress, Spencer built up the courage and decided to send his speech off to his hero and aspiration, Mr. Steven Spielberg. Only a month later, he received a very pleasant personal call from DreamWorks, who were happy to inform him that his paper had been accepted and found valuable enough to be forwarded on to Mr. Spielberg himself. Having already written his autobiography in screenplay trilogy length format, and having had it read by a qualified editor in the self-development industry who generously classed it as a modern-day Bible, it remains Spencer's greatest hope and desire to meet Mr. Spielberg and share his screenplay with him. After his initial recovery from schizophrenia 10 years ago, a time of deep introspection and questioning of reality took place for him. Then at the age of 23, during normal regular health, Spencer received a completely involuntary, graceful given experience of non-duality. Opened up to such a boundless extent, he has gained a profoundly strong intuitive sense about reality and the disposition of others. And as a result from that, a tenacious pursuit has flourished to share and express knowledge and wisdom in the fields of transpersonal psychology and mystic philosophy, complementing all spiritual traditions, both Eastern and Western. Since that life-changing experience back in early 1996, Spencer's unmediated insight and wisdom has continued to increase over the years, and he has unswervingly maintained that undying devotion and passion to continue writing literature about anything truly and authentically transpersonal, and convey it in the most simple, clear, precise, and understandable way possible. Regarding his transpersonal experiences, they occurred quite naturally during normal, regular health, and were not a result of the illness he had long overcome. Spencer has two very competent and reliable doctors who specialize in such unique cases as his own and can vouch for his authenticity and credibility in such. Because of his experiences in both, Spencer is a very strong advocate for conveying that no matter what illness we encounter in life, mental, physical, or emotional, it can in no way damage or corrupt our deeper subjective self, or ultimately deprive us from experiencing and realizing that greater true aspect of ourself and reality in total. Offended and appalled by this lack of address regarding holistic, transpersonal, and spiritual issues concerning mental illness, in July 2002, Spencer bravely launched his own website, the Freeman Foundation, with the deliberate aim to boldly set out to tackle this very ignored, or rather rejected perspective, which has been cautiously brushed aside by the material biochemical procedures dominating psychotherapy and the mental health industry at large since its time of practice. Spencer chose the name Freeman as his work conveys the knowledge and experience he has successfully used to live and be a free man from the chains of mental illness. Fully aware of the brandings and misconceptions associated with mental illness and spirituality, it is for this very reason why Spencer has taken the very brave and bold step to place his goodwill reputation on the line to speak out and address such very sensitive and misunderstood areas of psychology and spirituality, which for the main have been greatly overlooked by the psychiatric profession and industry in general. Being an aspiring activist for human rights, Spencer has struggled with social prejudice regarding mental illness and fully pertains into human and spiritual equality, regardless of illness, disability, circumstance, race, gender, sexuality, age, or religion. Born in England in 1972, Spencer lives at home with his family on the northern beaches of Sydney, Australia. To his friends, he is known as Spence. To his family, he is Spen. A qualified graphic designer, he has a very sharp eye for detail, having naturally developed strong artistic drawing skills at an early age, now concentrating his innate talents on illustration and design. Wanting to become an actor, Spencer studied acting in his early 20s. His passion also lies in film production, particularly that of visual effects. And because of his creative skills in visualization, he now focuses his energy on the other side of the camera, making short films and writing screenplays for feature film in his spare time, whenever the inspiration comes and captures him. Being a typical Scorpio, he is very intense about his approach to life, and as a water sign, he loves going to the beach and body surfing. His favourite pastime is going to the movies to escape from all the cynical materialism of modern Western society, which he hopes will one day be overthrown by brighter optimism in the future.
Now today, I lead a healthy, normal life, totally free from any related features of the illness or medication. I have a structured life, I keep a job, I drive a car just as well and accurately as anyone else with a license. I have a beautiful lady friend, and as my photos show, I participate in all of life's activities just as regular and well as anyone else. I have even backpacked around Europe for a solid fun-packed time without resorting to medication to keep well. People who know me even find it hard to believe that I ever suffered from such an illness, considering my present well-being. And people who I meet for the first time would have absolutely no clue whatsoever to distinguish, discover, or know of my past history with such. Unless, of course, I reveal that openly. And why not? Since my presence being just as mentally well in operation, conduct, and presentation as their own self.
Spencer, thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
I guess I should start by asking the obvious. What is schizophrenia like, and how do you look at reality and life now that you have fully recovered from it and regained your original health again, and for so long?
Schizophrenia is like a horrific nightmare while being awake. It seems like everyone is out to get you and there is no place you can hide. It's like a never-ending synchronous roller coaster ride of constant negativity, paranoia, fear and violation. Except it is your own mind playing the cruel, degrading game of inaccurate and harmful registering of reality. It's not split personality as society has been misled to believe, but rather a very frightening way to perceive and register reality. It's like living in a constant hell.
And hearing voices? What's that like?
Voices, thank God, I've only had them once for about half a day during my first encounter with the illness. At the deepest stage of my fall into psychosis, I was sitting in the doctor's room in Pindora Hospital. He was questioning me and I was sitting there totally scared out of my mind, wondering what was going on and what was wrong with me. Throughout the interview, he had to go and attend to other duties, and after a certain period of time of being left alone there, I began to hear my father's voice, calling from outside the door, just in the corridor, not too far away. "How's it going, Spen?" he said. After about the third time of him calling out to me, I went out into the corridor, only to find there was no one there. Totally freaked out by this, I knew right there and then something was seriously wrong, and I felt extremely scared for my safety and well-being. Right from the very start of it all, I knew something was wrong, and this was not who I was supposed to be. Out of all the features of schizophrenia, hallucinations are the most terrifying.
And that is the only time you have ever heard voices?
Yes. My other 3 relapses featured situations of referral.
Which is?
Situations of referral is when you think, or rather perceive, people and events are directly relating to you and leaving you personal messages, like the movie or commercials you just happen to be watching on the TV at that very moment, or a song being played on the radio. When you are out and about driving, you might think that cars are following you around, and car number plates are directly relating to you. The mind, when it is unwell, is extremely cunning, as it can pick up on any little thing right there and then before you, and relate it back to you in some uncomfortable, violating way. It only takes the smallest little thing to set it all off into motion, and once you are in its wake, there is no stopping it. It's literally like an exhausting hell. But out of all of this, hearing voices is the worst. And as I say, thank God, it has only happened to me once. My other 3 relapses featured situations of referral and only last for about 3 weeks for each.
Have you ever had visual hallucinations like portrayed in the film A Beautiful Mind?
A Beautiful Mind was an excellent film, in so much that it gave society an insider's perspective on the illness. But I've never known anyone with the illness to visually hallucinate to the extent as portrayed in the film. I've never known an hallucination to drive a car down the street and partake in a shoot-'em-up car chase. Did John Nash actually travel from one place to another all because of an hallucination? I don't think so. Unless, of course, he was hallucinating the entire situation and environment around him. But I've never known symptoms to be that extreme. Yet we have to give lenience considering movies are mostly a visual entertaining medium, and that was the reason why the story was scripted for visual hallucinations, for more of a dramatic impact. But due to this exaggeration, the film was inaccurate. In most cases of schizophrenia, hallucinations are of the auditory type. This was the case for me too.
It can be said that we all hear voices in our head, so I guess we all have a little schizophrenia.
No. There is a difference between hearing voices and mind chatter. Mind chatter is a very normal function of mind. As distracting as it is very influential nonetheless. We all have thoughts and ideas swirling around in our head all day long. That's normal and sane. Hearing voices, on the other hand, is extremely different. With schizophrenia, although it is a result of brain chemistry being out of whack and is happening in your head, you actually register the voices externally, out there. And believe me, that is not a pleasant thing to experience. It's very scary. Only once, thank God.
You say schizophrenia is the result of brain chemistry being out of whack. So is it a mental illness or a physical illness?
It is a physical illness of the brain. We have to remember that as complex as it is, the brain is still a physical organ. But we call it a mental illness because it is associated with the mind. The fact that medication can rebalance and restore that accounts it only occurs at the physical level. So no, schizophrenia is not a result and has nothing to do with bad spirits taking over our mind. From what I have experienced, I do not believe it goes any deeper or further than the physical brain. The breakdown occurs at the physical level only. Our deeper subjective self is not corrupted by all the chaos happening at the surface. The very fact that you can observe a thought passing through your mind verifies observation takes place behind and beyond the mind. Brain experiments only verify that too.
Would you care to explain?
There was a show a few years back called Brain Story, which was shown on ABC's spiritual show Compass. In the first segment of the program, there was an experiment carried out on a lady having brain surgery at the time. Her skull cap was removed and she was fully conscious during the surgery. In the experiment, the patient was asked to count up to 10 starting from 1. So she counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. When she got to 5, the surgeon then placed an electrical current through her brain from a small pencil-like probe placed directly on her exposed tissue, and she went into a murmur of inactivity. After a second or two, the surgeon then removed the probe from her brain, and she continued to count from where she left off, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The patient even had a little laugh to herself when she finished counting. After the surgery was complete, the professor conducting the experiment quietly asked her, "What did you experience when we stunned your brain?" Remarkably, the lady said, "I was aware that I could not count." Now this raises the question, if her brain flow was rendered inactive during the probing, then from where was she still conscious there and then? Now some scientists may argue that only parts of her brain were rendered inactive, but if you look into the scientific field of quantum physics, it very much testifies to what the patient experienced. That consciousness is deeper and subjective, behind and beyond brain activity. The physical brain is merely the personal interface between subjectivity and objectivity. So is consciousness really a product of the brain as the materialists out there pertain to? Or is consciousness something more elusive and boundless? In essence, that is.
So do we create reality from our minds?
Can I answer that one a little later?
Sure. So how long have you lived free from schizophrenia?
I've lived a normal, regular life now for more than 31 years. It has been more than 5 years since my last relapse, and if you were to combine all my episodes together, they would come to a total of about 90 days out of the entire 32 plus years of my current earth life so far. And if you want a percentage on it, I've experienced schizophrenia for only 0.76% of the time out of my entire human existence, this time round, so far.
However, having said all that, there is no 100% guarantee that I will never encounter another relapse again in my life. But with everything I have gained from my 10 years of experience, I now have substantial tools and armoury to prevent such again. And I will do everything in my power to continue to do so. As mentioned, my work focuses on holistic issues regarding psychosis. Considering this perspective is greatly shunned and not given its due address resulting from the biological materialist methods dominating the industry and media, I feel it is about time a credible and justified address was given by someone experienced in such, both directly and substantially. Thus the reason for devoting my time to conveying such. In his letter of invitation, it was the Prime Minister of Australia, Mr. John Howard himself, who mentioned the global importance of spiritual and ethical concerns regarding mental health. And I am very glad that someone of the Prime Minister's position has been bold enough to openly state the importance of such. I will speak more about holistic and spiritual concerns a little later, but for now I'd like to address more immediate ethical issues regarding schizophrenia.
Looking at your work, I see you don't mess about. You cut straight to the chase by addressing the very sensitive issues, even issues that are so obvious they go amiss to most of us. One of the main ones being the social inaccuracy of labelling people as the illness they suffer from. Would you care to explain that?
Ever since I recovered from schizophrenia, I've always been extremely annoyed and upset by doctors, scientists, society, and media yourself mostly, who address people contending with schizophrenia or any illness as that is who and what they are and always will be. They are a diabetic, they are a schizophrenic, etc. In my situation, calling me a schizophrenic, do you really think that is even remotely accurate considering I've lived so long free from any relapse trace of its symptoms? If I never again have a relapse, does that give you the right to continue labelling me as a schizophrenic? Absolutely not. And nor am I a recovered schizophrenic or an ex-schizophrenic. You cannot be a recovered schizophrenic if you have recovered from schizophrenia, because you have returned to normal regular health, free from the illness. Schizophrenia is the illness, not the person in essence. Any illness prevents us from being who and what we truly are. Illness is a violation of our true self. Illness, no matter what, is never a true expression of our original identity. Illness deprives us of that. But even if I were still sick, it would still be totally inaccurate to call me a schizophrenic. And I explain this in my speech, Holistic Ethics for Psychosis.
Even though I have won the horrific battle to return to my normal self again, and the illness itself is no longer part of my life at present, the most frustrating, humiliating and demoralising aspect I find is people like myself, even long after recovery, are still categorised and labelled as a schizophrenic. Not only by society and media in general, but also being addressed as such by doctors, scientists and psychiatrists in the industry. This is extremely inaccurate, and I'll explain why. Health and harmony is the natural state to be. Illness and discord prevents us from keeping that natural state of being, and therefore any illness, no matter what it may be, is something we are not. We all strive for and want health and harmony. No one strives for illness, discord and violation. Why? because health and harmony is our natural and comfortable state of function. Even when I was sick, even the very first time, it was extremely disturbing and profoundly obvious to me that something was seriously wrong, and I certainly didn't have to rely on any qualified diagnosis to tell me that. I was very much aware of that for myself. You never hear someone who is diagnosed with cancer being called a cancer. They are addressed as having cancer or suffering from cancer. A person is not a Parkinson's disease. They suffer from Parkinson's disease. Keeping this in mind, there are many other illnesses that we label and categorise people as. Take diabetes. It would be far more accurate to say they have diabetes or they suffer from diabetes, rather than to address them as a diabetic. Although not an illness, a person with drinking problems is not an alcoholic. They simply suffer from alcohol debilitation that disables them from normal regular health. I have met many people who do and have suffered from schizophrenia, but never in all my life have I ever come across a schizophrenic. This is a very sensitive and very large issue that needs to be addressed, because for those of us who have struggled with mental illness and now lead normal lives, being categorised as a schizophrenic as opposed to being labelled as a diabetic can be very offensive and degrading to who we truly are. With any illness, we are not that in essence. Are we a cancer in essence if it happens to come up in our life at some stage? No, we are not a cancer. Do you see how degrading and humiliating that is? Well, that is what people out there contending with schizophrenia have to put up with all the time. Your social brandings of ignorance. With any illness we contend with, we are a person to start with above all else. We are a human being, just deprived of our health by the illness of cancer, Parkinson's disease, schizophrenia, or whatever. Last time I checked, I was, am, and always will be a human being, first and foremost, till the day I die, just like anyone else on this planet. First and foremost, I am a human being who has overcome the illness of schizophrenia, and anyone else who is still contending with the illness is certainly not schizophrenic in essence, whether they were born with it or as a result of a traumatic event suffered in life. They are a human being first and foremost, who is merely suffering from the illness of schizophrenia. I will be glad the day comes when we find a cure for this, because then no one will ever have any right whatsoever to remotely have the social slip of the tongue to label people as the illness ever again. First and foremost, we are a human being, just like you. Although Russell Crowe's excellent film A Beautiful Mind has done a wonderful job to help society understand the illness with far more acceptance and compassion, there is still so much collective social ignorance, prejudice and stigma out there about schizophrenia. Even with all the good efforts of education, mental illness is still an issue that is shunned and rejected by mainstream society, who are fortunate enough to have regular mental health and have no need to consider such. We of us who have encountered, and those who still do encounter schizophrenia, first and foremost, we are a human being just like everyone else. We are just a human being who may well be struggling with, or may have even overcome a particular illness that prevents us from keeping normal regular health. Either way, we are a person of equal value, just like anyone else, no matter what position or status in life. The biggest misconception among society regarding the illness is the belief that once you get schizophrenia, you're screwed for the rest of your life. And that is so not the case. Look at me. I'm living proof that that belief is a huge mistake. I may not be cured from the illness, as it can and may strike back at any time. But for now, for all these years past, I have certainly fully recovered from its symptoms and returned to my normal health again. And in myself, I am just as healthy and normal as I was before the illness ever came upon me. And I will do everything in my good power to continue to maintain my mind's health for the rest of my days. Even though I have fully recovered from schizophrenia, I have to confess I do get a slight touch of anxiety once in a while. But anxiety is not a symptom of schizophrenia. Although anxiety can lead into schizophrenia, it is not a symptom of it.
And believe me, I would much rather put up with mild anxiety than schizophrenia any day of the week. That is my Monday-itis that I get once in a while. Here's a simple analogy which sums up my words about how inaccurate it is to label people as an illness. If you have a Tommy t-shirt and it gets a stain on it due to wear and tear, the label of the t-shirt does not all of a sudden change to stain. It is still and always, first and foremost, a Tommy t-shirt, no matter how long the stain is there. Just as Tommy is the name of the t-shirt itself is its foundation and essence. Here's the translation of the analogy. The stain on the t-shirt represents illness. The wear and tear represents the trials of life. Tommy, the name of the t-shirt, is the original identity, the human being. And the t-shirt itself is who we ultimately are, in foundation and essence.
No matter what the illness, it will never define the human identity or our essential true and pure being. Illness may limit our manifest expression, but our humanity in essence is still and always fully free from such, or any other violation that deprives us from that inner and outer appearance of health. Any illness prevents us from being who and what we truly are. Schizophrenia is an illness, not a person. Thus, there is no such thing as a schizophrenic.
Medication is another issue you raise regarding individuals' dignity. Could you elaborate on that?
Media and TV series play on this all the time. We hear it constantly on comedies and TV shows. Go and take your meds. He's gone off his meds again, etc. It's extremely demoralising, totally inaccurate and completely hypocritical. Hypocritical in the sense that we all take something to keep in shape, whether it being vitamins, exercise or even medication. Just because medication is associated with your mental health, it should not be separated from the rest of your body as a demoralising, degrading prejudice. And just because someone relies on it to keep their brain well, that should not be seen as a prejudice from how we keep the rest of our body well either. Your brain, as important as it is just as much a part of yourself as any other bodily function we strive to keep fit. Whether exercise or medication, they do exactly the same thing. They keep us well and healthy. So what's the prejudice in that? Whenever I used to speak to my friend Ann Devison on the phone, the thing she would always ask me every time is, am I still on medication? Referring to if I still needed to take it to keep healthy and sane. And this always frustrated me and made me feel lower and inadequate because of the very reasons I've just explained. Whether medication, vitamins or even exercise, they all do exactly the same thing. Keep the body well and healthy. Keep us regular and normal. And further, I've proven to myself I do not need to rely on medication to keep well. I've travelled around Europe for a solid fun-packed time for a whole month without any hint of relapse when I wasn't taking anything to keep well. But I have to say, in that situation, I was carefree, having fun and free from stress. As life is not always like that, I like to keep safe by staying on medication, which at the moment is hardly anything anyway. Life is not always full of fun and laughs. You have to be prepared for the curveball that is thrown at you from time to time and be able to deal with it. And with medication as that extra precaution, it covers all my bases.
I guess that media companies have a lot to answer for when it comes to spinning shows that target mental illness.
Yes, even the news as well. All we ever hear about are the negative stories because of the stigma and association that comes with mental illness. We so need to hear about the positive success stories, my stories, if we are to break free from this constant misconstrued mould media has placed on society about the illness. Society is only receiving half the story, if that. 1 in 5 people will encounter the illness at some stage in their life, and all we ever hear about are the negative extreme cases, which is really a minute percentage of the total.
It must be a big issue for you.
Absolutely. It's extremely annoying. And I'll give you a situation where I personally became very upset at one stage. About a year ago, there was an episode of Criminal Intent where the villain, whose name was Spencer, killed someone and set up his brother for it, because the brother was conveniently suffering from schizophrenia. Pretty coincidental? Now, even though I just happened to catch the end of this episode, it made me feel rather uncomfortable, considering the associations. Who was I supposed to relate to out of that one? The killer whose name was Spencer, or his sick brother with schizophrenia? Either way, it was a very degrading no-win situation for me in both cases, and I felt rather awkward and upset, and somewhat violated in an indirect way. Now, I was not paranoid about it in ways of relapse or pre-symptoms. I was angry more than anything that I just happened to catch the end of it, because it was still nonetheless extremely coincidental to me personally. In that case, I had a healthy right to be paranoid about it, because coincidence did indeed just happen to relate to me directly. I even told my friend Anne Devison about it, because I was so angry and upset, and I had to tell someone how I felt, just to get it off my chest. Just imagine how you would feel in that position if you were me, watching that. It was not very nice. Yet even though it did get to me, it was still nothing more than a freak coincidence. There was also an episode of Wire in the Blood, shown on the ABC about a year ago as well, which targeted mental illness for the serial killings in that particular show. I'm not going to go into that one, but I could go on and on about how unjust media brands mental illness.
Society always asks the question, what is normal anyway? I guess you are more than qualified to shed some light on that one.
Absolutely, and my speech covers that one very nicely.
You may have noticed my deliberate use of the word normal in my dialogue so far. I've done this as it doesn't cease to amaze me that mainstream society still asks the question, so what is normal anyway? Well, having encountered insanity and having returned to sanity to once again register reality as it actually is, I certainly understand and appreciate the very accurate definition and grammatical term of the word normal, far beyond the appreciation of any normal person who takes that privilege of health and stability for granted and knows no different from having normal, regular health.
Being normal means you are a healthy individual and in stable mind. This does not mean your personal habits, likes, dislikes, or idiosyncrasies. These are your unique traits of personality. Normal refers to the general picture. It means being healthy and well, and having a stable disposition of mind.
Human rights is another big issue for you. How do you address that in regard to mental illness?
No different from any other prejudice society places on others for their ailments, race, age, gender, sexuality, or religion. No matter what illness we encounter in life, we are not that in essence. What we are in essence is that which is the same in all of us. And we are all the same in essence. We are all human beings. And our human essence is never, in any way, separate from the foundation of all life. Remember my analogy of the Tommy T-shirt? Well, it is that constant foundation throughout all reality that constitutes our essential equality. No matter what our perception of the world around us may be, or how we take it, one thing is blatantly obvious, and we all seem to miss it because of our confined personal identity to individuality. That being, we all exist, we all share, and we all live on the same planet, in the same galaxy, and in the same universe. Key word being same. No matter how different our personalities may be, essentially behind all that, we are all made of the same stuff of reality. That is why in essence we are all equal. We are all the same in essence. And when it comes to human rights in that respect, particularly with mental illness, that essence of equality has to be realised, acknowledged and honoured by us all, if we are to ever achieve that quality and value of life. Reality and existence in total is the same for us all. And as we are all unique as individuals, we can take that any way we choose. But the important thing is to remember the bigger picture, that we all share in the same thing, existence, and no one is exclusive or separate from that.
In my book, which is called Into the Light Again, I take great care to verify this area of reality. providing many justifiable sources of knowledge, scientific as well as the transpersonal. I also place a rather important emphasis on the fact that no matter what illness we encounter in life, whether mental, emotional or physical, it can in no way damage or corrupt our deepest subjective self, or ultimately deprive us of experiencing and realising that greater aspect of ourself and reality in total.
Your story of recovery is truly inspiring, but what is even more profound is what you went on to discover from the aftermath of deep soul searching. Can you give us a bit of history and insight into that realisation?
My inquiry began in my early 20s. When I recovered from my first episode of schizophrenia, I began to question how and why the mind can act in such a devastating, destructive way. And I also began to develop a tenacious pursuit to understand what really is consciousness. Fortunately for me, my initial psychiatrist at the time specialised in transpersonal psychology and was also associated with the School of Philosophy for many years. I would visit my doctor every Thursday afternoon, and instead of being counselled, we would freely and eagerly discuss topics on the nature of consciousness. I even remember how our very first conversation started. I asked him, is consciousness produced from the brain, or does the brain just house it for use and operation? And from there, my real journey of inquiry began. As the weeks passed, my awareness was becoming more and more in awe for the greater reality to existence that was being confided in me. Not only was I feeling great joy from such discussions, so was my doctor. Then one day, a few months later, during normal regular health, I was struck, totally out of the blue, with a very brief yet very intense experience of non-duality, lasting for about 10 seconds in relative calculation. Within that time, I felt, and I stress the word felt, no difference between my immediate self and everything else around and beyond me. The difference between here and there had gone. It was as if my individual boundaries had been lost and nothing distinguished me from all else.
For those who are unfamiliar with the term, non-duality is an ancient philosophical term which simply means one and not separate. In regards to reality, all parts are part of the whole, and non-duality is considered as the central insight and perspective to transpersonal psychology. When it comes to explaining my experience, the classic analogy that comes to mind is the individual wave merging back into the ocean. It was that my subjective being had become boundless and merged back into the being of all reality in total. Just as transpersonal psychology accounts to verify the subjective source of all existence, so too does quantum mechanics verify consciousness as the basis and foundation of all reality, not only from the reference point of individual observation, but from all places everywhere, within, throughout and beyond everything. And my experience definitely revealed to me that is so. What has been accounted for by indirect scientific means was revealed to me directly and personally. And what I experienced directly has been accounted for throughout the ages, throughout all world scripture and spiritual traditions. As it is written, for in that we live and move and have our being. I was 23 when I encountered this very profound experience, and it has forever changed my orientation on life. Ever since that time, I've developed an undying passion for anything authentically transpersonal, and to share such sacred knowledge and wisdom for the benefit of others.
From my encounter with it, I have found that a true transpersonal experience is non-prejudice and non-preferential, and is open and available to anyone, regardless of illness, disability, race, age, gender, sexuality, intelligence, education, qualifications, experience, position, status, wealth, recognition, refinement, realization, and even religious preference for that matter.
For many people who do not know about the reality of such, don't you think that they may speculate your mystic experiences as just being a result of hallucinations of the illness? How do you justify that to the contrary? Many of us out there don't believe in all this to start with, and from that perspective, you would indeed be labelled as still being very much mad.
That's a fair question. But for starters, and as I always say to people, regardless of what you believe, it's either there or it isn't. It's that simple. And as I said in my speech, experiences of union with all reality have been happening to human beings since the beginning of time. It is not a rare or unique experience. Correction. It is rare and unique at any one time on the mass scale, but it can happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. Experiencing such is non-prejudice, but we have to be seeking it out to allow it to come upon us. Sadly, most of us run around totally blinded by materialism to ever be inclined to encounter and appreciate the true meaning of life. Saint Teresa of Avila, the 16th century Spanish mystic, stated that if you prepare the house, the guest, grace, will come. You have to be inclined towards it for it to come upon you. Secondly, I was in good, regular, normal health when I encountered my first mystic experience. So no, it was not a result of the illness, such as delusional religious identifications, the Jesus syndrome as it is commonly known. No. Thirdly, all my mystic experiences have been a profound feeling of unity and connection with everything. I did not see or hear it all, which would assume hallucinations. I felt unified with it all, at the very depths of my being. I've never known anyone to hallucinate a subjective feeling of being. Maybe physical feelings of the body, yes, but not subjective feelings of being, and especially that of unity with everything beyond yourself. Nor do I think it is even remotely possible to hallucinate at that level of being, since it is deeper, behind and beyond the corruption of the individual mind anyway. And further, for those who doubt the reality of something greater and beyond personal identity, if you want cold hard justification that consciousness is behind and beyond all reality, not just confined within individuality, then I invite you to go and take a beginner's crash course in quantum physics, and it may just reveal to you what I testify to here.
God?
Well, take a look at reality close enough and it will very much lead to that ideal. Just for starters, take a look at the building block of nature, the atom, how precise and perfect its structure and many arrangements operate. That is certainly not random. If it were, the entire universe and all reality would just be a total mash of gross splatter everywhere. This is not the nature of the universe. Look at how complex and marvellous nature is. There is no way that is random. There is precise conscious order behind the atom structure and function that makes up everything. And that conscious order is everywhere, throughout all reality and existence. It's in you, it's in me, it's in the chair, it's in the camera, it's in the building, it's in nature, the earth, and even space and beyond. That conscious presence is everywhere. It is boundless, infinite, and impersonal. Yet since we exist within it, we have the ability, or rather it can impose its presence upon us directly and personally. And this is what happens in a mystic encounter when we experience union with the all in all. How else do you think unity with all reality is possible? It's because of that boundless conscious presence pervading it all, holding everything together. And it is the same for all of us, no matter what name we give it or how we desire to worship it. Whether we believe in it or not, it is always there, sustaining everything.
What you speak of sounds like the Force out of Star Wars.
Yes, very much so. Only Yoda got his words back to front and round the wrong way. It creates life, not life creates it.
So there is a God then?
Don't take my word for it. I'd rather you discover the answer to that for yourself. We all have the capacity to discover the answer to that, what is true about that. We just need to be given the spark to find out to start with. That's all I'm going to say in response to that.
And to empower your dignity further still, I will let you in on a little secret. Your subjective self is just as healthy, normal, and exactly identically the same as in a sane person. Subjectivity is the perfect God aspect that pervades, creates, sustains, and retrieves all manifest reality. You, me, everyone and everything, everywhere. You want dignity? You cannot get any more dignified than that. To realize that is far more empowering for you than anything else you could ever achieve or hope for, because I can tell you now that most individuals of sane disposition are not even remotely aware of such a quality and unity shared in subjectivity, the subjective absolute of all in all.
So how is a mystic experience different from a psychotic experience? Or do they share the same features?
No, they are not the same. Psychosis is the most frightening thing you could ever want not to experience. It is extremely horrific, terrifying, violating, tormentive, destructive, fragmented, and very uncomfortable to our normal state of being. A genuine mystic experience, on the other hand, although it can be frightening due to its profundity and foreignness to individuality, is extremely beautiful, passionate, redemptive, freeing, boundless, and is of a great unitive feeling and quality. Having experienced both, I can certainly discern the difference in features and quality between both. They are not the same. If anything, they are complete opposites. Psychosis is like going to hell. The mystical is like going to heaven. When it comes to the psychotic high and mystic experiences, again, they are not the same. The psychotic high is a product of unbalanced brain chemistry and is a delusional, hallucinate state of mind. It may seem like a higher state of unity and being, but it is nothing more than an artificial simulation of the real thing. Drug-induced states of mystical unity are another artificial simulation of the real thing. Genuine mystic experience is beyond all that, beyond the mind and its influences. It is the subjective self of the individual behind the mind, connecting with and merging back into the greater subjective self, infinitely beyond personal identity. Just like a wave merging back into the ocean. The former is personal delusion. The latter is impersonal and profound. But that is not to say that someone contending with mental illness does not have the capacity to encounter a genuine mystic experience. Since the divine is everywhere, it is within us all. We all equally exist within it to start with, regardless of what our degree of perception, awareness may be about that, delusional, accurate or otherwise. It's just that with mental illness thrown in with that, it is a lot harder to authenticate and verify, given the seemingly similar qualities and features between both. But the thing with mental illness, psychosis, as I have found, is it totally reduces our pride and ego, individuality, to virtually nothing, and in such a vulnerable, open and exposed state of being that may and can allow for direct connection with the all. And in that scenario, going from the depths of psychosis to an immediate opening up into the mystical, this needs to be just as much acknowledged as a path to. Maybe a little unorthodox and an unpleasant way to go about reaching the divine, but just as much possible and accountable.
As common as spiritual and religious delusion is associated with mental illness, this does not in any way whatsoever take away from the ultimate reality that even the hell of schizophrenia cannot deprive us from our spiritual essence and source that is always there, true, pure and free, behind and beyond all the fleeting turmoil observed and experienced at the level of mind. And nor does it take away from the full possibility of a person who encounters mental illness to be just as much open to encounter a genuine, authentic, spiritual or mystic experience as anyone else may. It may be harder to authenticate given the circumstances, but no less possible.
So what do you say to people who say, if there is a God, why does he, she, it allow such horrific crimes of war and violence occur? Or even natural disasters like the one we have just faced?
Relative life is always going to present trials and tribulations. That is the very nature of the relative. Anyone who thinks you can find absolute happiness in relative life is seriously deluding themselves and others. And I think it was the Buddha who said that life is full of pain and suffering, very much to the example Jesus of Nazareth demonstrated throughout his life. All wars and violation against humanity are a result of someone somewhere feeling more important than another and wanting to dominate over others. This is a result of severe over-identification with ego. Imagine just for a moment if we were all aware of our common connection in life, that which we all equally share in, the divine underlying unity holding everything together, that conscious presence I mentioned earlier. We would all realise that we are all part of the one and same absolute being. What do you think would happen then? You would treat everything and everyone as yourself, for it is all a part of yourself anyway. You would not hurt or violate another, for you would only be doing that to yourself. Rather, you would treat everything and everyone with care, compassion, respect and dignity, as yourself. Where else do you think the ideal of the golden rule stems from? Treat others as you would have them treat you. This is not some made-up religioso ethic to keep society in line. No. It is much more than that. It is a profound realization of the ultimate nature of reality that all spiritual masters experienced and taught to us, to the capacity we could live by, to try to keep peace and harmony. But ego is the governor of relativity and individuality, the lower self, and being so, we rely on it for our uniqueness of personality. If it were not for ego, the divine higher self would be revealed, and the game of life would be over in an instant. That's the true purpose of ego, to allow us as individuals to operate as such, and to relate to each other and the universe in a personal, relative manner. The trick is not to over-identify with it, for then that's when the trouble starts. Although God gave us the will to act freely and independently, we have to be very careful and considerate about how we direct that.
And natural disasters, what do you say about that?
Ultimately, there is a reason for everything, even natural disasters. However, it is impossible to justify or make sense of the reasons why such things occur when they do. It is not possible to look at any catastrophic event that happens in the here and now and try and justify it in the moment, right here and now. It cannot be done. The only way you will ever find the answers to such things is by acknowledging all the events in totality and what they lead to in the bigger picture. The human mind does not have that capacity. It is only relative and finite. Since we as humans only have the capacity to operate in the here and now, we can only look at events as they happen in the window of the present. We do not have the privilege to see or know the greater picture and meaning behind such things in totality. The only one who has that privilege is the Absolute. Yet intuition tells me our recent disaster has much to do with placing the terrorist attacks into a perspective light. But in what way I do not know. Ultimately, it is all in the hands of the Creator. That is what it means to have faith, to surrender your fears and uncertainty back to that.
Speaking of intuition, you claim to have a strong connection with it. How do you tell the difference between that and the constant chatter and uncertainty of mind? Again, people may say that listening to a wise old voice in the back of your head is another sign of insanity.
That wise old voice in the back of our heads is not insanity or even intuition for that matter. It is conscience. Although conscience and intuition are both higher functions of consciousness, there is a difference between both. And mind chatter is totally different again. Mind chatter is of our personal mind and identity, ego, the lower self. Conscience and intuition are of the higher self. Conscience and intuition are God's way of talking to us. As I like to put it, conscience and intuition are the agents of consciousness. Let me put it this way. We all know when we tell a lie. Well, that is conscience pricking our mind. And that is not something that is taught to us. Yes, we are taught values and how we should conduct ourselves to certain customs, but conscience is a higher faculty of consciousness that is always there and present, no matter what our values or customs. And when we don't pay attention to its heed, that is when we usually end up in trouble. We all have conscience imposing on us, but just how much attention we pay to it and keep in line with it is another thing entirely. Ego and pride usually dominates and ignores its keeping, and sadly, modern society only reflects that. Most of us do not pay attention to conscience and intuition anymore, because we rely so much on external information and stimulus to drill into us what is acceptable and fashionable. And given the quality of commercial television these days, that advice and influence is rather tragic. When it comes to intuition, again, most of us hardly have any real resort to it, because we rely on others to tell us what is supposedly right and so. Just as conscience is a higher faculty of consciousness, so too is intuition. But most of the time, our surface mind, that mind chatter of ego, blinds us from allowing us to connect with it. Personal mind is always questioning reality. That is the very nature of ego and ignorance. Intuition, on the other hand, provides the answers. While conscience tells us what we should do, intuition provides us with the answers. When you refine the mind, you can subjectively receive immediate knowing about something or someone. Although the mind can interpret that as an idea or thought, intuition's impact upon the mind is immediate and impersonal, and very much leaves personal mind in awe for what it has received. When we are in the right frame of mind, in contemplation, intuition provides the answers rather bluntly, and in most cases too overwhelming for our ego, personal mind to grasp or fully understand and appreciate. Thus is the embarrassment and humiliation of ego when corrected. This is what happens when we receive insight or revelation. A profound realization can happen in a split second, and the mind is forever after trying to capture and define that in some relative literal way. For me now, when I'm considering the nature of something that is rather hard to understand and define in relative terms, and I want to know the answer to it, I'll play around with the idea in my head very loosely, but eventually when I'm ready, and this may be days or even weeks later, intuition will eventually provide me with the answer. When it comes to things of the immediate nature before me in the moment, receiving intuition about everyday things has become so common for me that it happens regularly every day. I'll give you some examples of intuition in that respect. A few months ago, I was working away at my job at Officeworks DY, doing my usual checkout serving at the cash register there. And the next customer to approach me was this mature-aged woman, very cool and composed, somewhat dignified, refined and proud-looking. And after a second of reading her disposition, I was inclined to ask. So I said to her, "Do you know Anne Devison?" Then looking at me, she said, "Yes, I do. How did you know that?" So I said to her very politely, "I could tell from your disposition." And she just smiled at me in return. I told her that I knew Anne, and she went on to tell me that she used to work with Anne at the ABC. Another example was working away at work when this somewhat cool, composed, middle-aged man, very trendy, casual, relaxed, and with it, approached me at the counter. Smiling at him, I said to him in a friendly manner, "You look like a director." And he said, "Actually, I'm a producer." After a friendly chat, his mobile rang, and as he was attending to the call, his young daughter asked me, "How could you tell that?" So I said to her, "He's just got that look about him," and we both had a little laugh. As it turned out, that producer was Rocky Bester, and he used to work with my old friend John Politzer at Becker. Now, does that sound like someone with mental illness to you?
No.
To me, that sounds like someone with immediate refined intuition. Nor was it guessing, and nor do I do it to every second customer I come across. It's like when I saw my girlfriend for the first time. I read her disposition instantly, the very moment I laid eyes on her, and I could tell straight away she was a good person and had a kind heart. That was 7 years ago, and she is still my best friend, and is shown to be that very same person I discerned in her for the first time those 7 years ago.
So you have the ability to accurately read people's disposition.
Yes.
So what sort of a person am I then?
That's my privilege only, and with respect to you, I'd rather not speak of your disposition directly in front of you on national television.
Okay. When it comes to thoughts and ideas about how we should conduct ourselves, how do you tell if they come from intuition or from personal mind, ego?
You tell a difference in their nature. If your thoughts and ideas are stemmed towards equality and unity, then they are founded in intuition and conscience of the higher self. If your thoughts and ideas are stemmed towards prejudice and separation, then they are a result of personal mind, ego, the lower self. As the saying goes, united we stand, divided we fall.
So can you give us a bit of insight how to connect and receive intuition?
It is far too hard to explain or put into words its immediate nature, but from my own experience the strength of connection with intuition is according to how refined and clear personal mind is, how in tune it is with the higher self. It comes with self-development and having an ethical and just state of mind. Intuition will never fall upon a mind that is corrupt or unjust. Its nature cannot land in such a state that does not complement or understand it. The mystics tell us that God will only fall upon a mind that is quiet and calm. This is what meditation ultimately aims for, connecting with the Creator. Intuition is my way of connecting with God.
And human suffering, illness and disability. What do you say about that when it comes to a good, perfect, all-loving God?
Again, only by accounting the past can we understand why we experience hardship and trials here and now. We cannot look at someone right here and now and place judgment on them for why they are in a certain situation in life. Only God knows that, and that is of His privilege only. So don't presume you can work that one out here in the relative. It cannot be done. I often wonder what I did way back to take on schizophrenia in this life. Yet no matter what we have done, we can always correct our errors, whether here or in another time. We are all open to redemption, no matter where we are at or what we have done. Grace works in mysterious ways, and magically we can miraculously somehow, some way, no matter how long it takes, always turn a negative into a positive, back to our true self, peace and harmony.
Your story is a classic example of turning a negative into a positive. Did you ever think that maybe God put you through this because you had the capacity and caliber to come through it and to give hope and inspiration to others who feel lost and helpless?
People have said that to me before, yes. But we all strive for the good. No one strives for the bad. The bad is always limiting us from the good. The reasons why we all strive for goodness is because its qualities are appealing to our true self. They are complementary to the very essence of our original nature, that which we all strive to attain. Peace, harmony, unity, goodness, love. These are all qualities of our true original nature. They are appealing qualities which we all desire, no matter in what shape or form, or what methods we use to attain them. Since relative life constantly throws a curveball at us, we have to do our best to correct it and turn it back towards our original nature of goodness. So yes, I have considered God put me through this to turn such into a positive. The illness of schizophrenia is truly horrific, and I think if anyone has the extreme fortune to have the capacity to overcome such serious trials and harshness, then I believe it is their responsibility, or rather their duty and obligation, to pass on whatever knowledge, wisdom or insight they've gained from that to help alleviate the pain and suffering of others. My book, Into the Light Again, is my knowledge and experience gained from my recovery, conveyed in practical terms to help others achieve what I have, a healthy, normal state of mind, and to reclaim their true self. I just want to read my introduction to you. Of all the illnesses there are to encounter in human life, one of the worst, most traumatic and devastating would have to be that of the mental illness schizophrenia. Being trapped in a mind that has gone mad is torture that surpasses any physical pain. If hell exists, then this is it. Negative, degrading, derogatory, destructive, self-sabotaging thoughts and images hitting your mind at 1,000 miles an hour, constantly, all day long, tormenting you to a degree where you are exhausted in terror, paranoia and pain. In your mind there is nowhere to go, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and those demons of torture keep coming at you and don't care how much pain they put you through. There seems to be no way out and no way to escape the darkness. We know this is not the way we should be, and that part of us that knows this is the part of us that is true and pure, observing all this madness experienced in the mind. It is the experiencer, the observer, our true self, that is wanting us to get out and escape this hell. There is always help in the outside world if we find it and want it, but to go deep within and know the most important part of yourself is pure is the first affirming step to come back to who you truly are and always will be. This is the way out of the darkness and back into the light again.
You say that you are conscious in your dreams and have been for many years, ever since your first mystic experiences took place. What is that like?
It's wonderful to step back into the point of observation and know that you're witnessing a dream taking place. Again, just like the brain experiment I mentioned, and with observing thoughts passing through our mind, this confirms that the observer, subjectivity, is behind and beyond the mind. Once I was aware in my dream of being on a train, and on the train I was asleep, and aware of that. I was aware of being asleep on the train in my dream. When you are conscious in your dreams, and you know it's a dream, you can also get away with doing things you wouldn't otherwise respectfully do when awake. If I come across a gorgeous woman in the street in my dream, I might very well take advantage of that situation there and then. In that scenario, I might say to myself there and then, okay, I know this is a dream, so why not? I also notice in the moment what my thoughts are saying in response to the dream scenario as it is happening. But in most cases my dreams feature the same themes, such as flying like Superman, meeting holy men, and having meetings with Steven Spielberg and all the gang about our next big adventure. But sometimes my dreams can be tricky too. Sometimes they are so real and vivid that in the moment of experiencing them, they present just as real as awake reality. And then it is hard to tell the difference. And at the moment my dreams are a far more fun and adventure than awake reality. And it is very rare that I ever have a bad dream or nightmare too.
So getting back to my earlier question, do we create reality from our minds?
Let me answer by asking you a question so you can appreciate what is so. Do I rely on your awareness to exist?
No.
Well, there you are. There's your answer. Your mind does not create external reality that is already there. It relates to and analyzes it all according to your disposition and level of awareness, perception. So yes, the sound of a falling tree crashing in a forest does exist, whether or not someone is there to witness it. As I said right from the start, the brain is the personal interface between subjectivity, the observer within ourself, and objectivity, the observed universe beyond ourself. It's the pivot point, rather the medium, between the inner and the outer. So just as I do not rely on your awareness to exist, nor does a tree, a dog, a bird, the mountains, the earth, the stars, or any other part of reality rely on your awareness to exist. Everything you observe before you exists within its own nature, within the being of all reality in total, non-local being, that conscious presence behind and beyond all things I mentioned earlier. Reality is not unique for any one of us, only our perception and degree of awareness about it is. No matter what our degree of perception, awareness may be, whether delusional, accurate or refined, we all exist in the same reality. We all exist on the same planet, in the same galaxy, and in the same universe. We all exist within the same thing, no matter how we take it. We can also put personal thoughts and ideas, whether negative or positive, from ego or true self, into word and action in the immediate. But ultimately, external reality exists completely free from our individual reference point, our personal mind. All objects of reality exist within the area of consciousness in which they reside at any given moment. Again, that conscious presence. All reality, including ourselves, exists within the boundless field of God's consciousness. As it is written, "For in that we live and move and have our being."
In the movie Bicentennial Man, a question is asked of the hero regarding his humanity. Why do you want this? And his answer is very clear. To be acknowledged for who and what I am. No more, no less. Not for acclaim, not for approval, but for the simple truth of that recognition. This has been the elemental drive of my existence, and it must be achieved if I am to live or die with dignity. Although the hero of the movie was initially a robot, I myself am not an artificial machine, but as a human being who has recovered from the degrading, demoralizing, and humiliating horrors of schizophrenia, I nevertheless account for this attitude with absolute conviction.
Your work, as altruistic as it is, has also been endorsed by the late Brother Wayne Teasdale, who was a close friend of the Dalai Lama. This is what he said about you. Spencer Perdriau offers us a more holistic and integral approach to psychological healing that takes into account the deeper roots of human identity in the transcendent reality, which is never touched by age, disability, illness, or death, but is ever new, ageless, wise, enlightened, infinitely sensitive in its spontaneous capacity of love, kindness, compassion, and mercy. This is our true identity, the essence of who we are, not the phenomenal ego of earthly life. Spencer has grasped this truth through his own experience of illness, which opened him up to the source. His vision here is refreshing and makes a significant contribution to healing from the perspective of genuine spirituality. He is emerging as a leader in this important area. Endorsements of that caliber don't come much better than that.
It always leaves me in awe how sincere Wayne was with his endorsement. People of high station and success very rarely ever speak of someone unknown or lower than them with equal or higher praise and admiration, especially for someone in my position. Pride for their own efforts and reputation usually gets in the way and holds them back from doing so. With what Wayne said about me, no one has ever acknowledged my efforts and achievements so kindly and beautifully like that before. Wayne was my spiritual confidant, and spiritually speaking, he understood me better than my own mother. He was and always will be a true mystic, in every sense of the word, and I am extremely grateful that our lives crossed paths for the short time we kept company. He was very dear to me, and he always will be. It was Wayne who suggested that I contribute my autobiography, Awakening, into the interspiritual collaboration, Awakening the Spirit, Inspiring the Soul.
In the book, you go into greater depth about your mystic experiences, and your writing style is very gifted and refined in that respect. You recall your experiences very vividly and explain them with great clarity, in a way that is appreciable. Would you like to share a bit of that with us?
When I first had my mystic experiences, it was important that I journal them immediately and accurately, while they were still fresh in my mind. I would like to read something of that for you, but I think it would be better if people read the book for themselves. There are many other inspiring stories in there as well.
In the book, you also claim to be a mystic. Don't you think that is being a little too bold and going a bit too far given your history? Yes, you have had mystic experiences, but why is it okay, in your eyes, to label yourself in such a high respect like that, and not in the other respect of illness?
In answer to the first question, given my history, no. In answer to the second, and as I have said before, any illness limits us from our true self and identity. Illness is not who we are in essence, nor is it our original identity. As a human being is our primary and essential identity at the earthly level, so is the mystic nature our original and essential identity in the greater scheme of things. And those human beings who have directly experienced ultimate identity have the right to claim themselves to be a mystic. That is their given honour in realising that. A mystic, or the mystic nature, is the original identity of the human being. So just as we are a human being in physical nature, a mystic is someone who has reclaimed their ultimate nature. That is what it means to be a mystic, reclaiming ultimate identity. Just as I am a human being in physical essence, I am a mystic in spiritual essence. Just as our earthly nature has the title of human being at this level, the title of mystic acknowledges our greater nature and identity. Ultimately, the mystic nature is all our original identity, with and in the Absolute. We are all essentially a mystic. So do not think that being a mystic is so high and mighty that it is beyond most of us. We all equally have right to that title, since it is our very essence, even above and beyond the human title. But only until we have personally experienced and realised that for ourselves do we have the right to take claim of that most sacred title. The mystic in all of us is our true self, the higher self, beyond the limitation of personal identity of the lower self, ego. So no, claiming to be a mystic is not being bold. It is being honest and true to myself, honouring what I have directly experienced and realised through my own trials and courage. I cannot deny what I have achieved. Again, it comes down to respect and dignity. So consider this. A label is accurate in so much that it represents our true self and identity, our original nature. It is not just to label me as an illness, for that is not my original nature. It is just to label me as a human being, for that is my original nature. It is just to label me as an earthling, for that is my original nature. And it is just to label myself as a mystic, for I have experienced ultimate nature. Remember my analogy of the Tommy t-shirt I conveyed earlier?
Yes.
Well, just as the label of the t-shirt symbolises our human nature and identity, the t-shirt itself stands for our ultimate nature and identity, the mystic nature of us all, the mystic in us all.
So once you have achieved unity with all reality, does that experience or feeling stay with you from that moment onwards?
No, it doesn't, but from that connection with the all in all, your personal, or rather your deeper subjective awareness is forever after established in an unshakable understanding and appreciation of the sacred unity and oneness of all reality, with and in the Creator. And no one can ever take that away from you. From union, you also receive profound understanding and insight about the true nature of things. However, the experience of union itself cannot be maintained constantly. It is far too great and profound for the individual to capture or maintain. God cannot and will not be captured. Its nature is absolute and beyond relativity. We can only merge back into it. But you do eventually come back to your boundaries and limitations of individuality again, the relative nature of life. As it is written in the East, before self-realization, chop wood, carry water. After self-realization, chop wood, carry water. You do come back to your relative self and carry out with everyday life again.
So I guess it is accurate to state that you have experienced both extremes of life. You've been to hell and back, and found heaven afterwards.
You could put it like that, yes.
Your autobiography also features as a screenplay trilogy, which you appropriately called Willpower. It has been sitting on the shelf for 7 years now, you say.
Yes, Willpower was my very first work, which I wrote back to back with my other book at the time, What Am I and Why?
So you have been writing away for quite some time now.
7 years is a long time to go without anything to show for it, especially when your very first work is plagiarised by someone rather prominent in the self-development industry, right from the very start of it all. And given my history with such an illness, which I even openly revealed to this individual in my folder passed on to him, much to his advantage, I could do nothing about it for the sake of my own safekeeping and lack of reputation. I was helpless to take justice and correction upon that violation. People say to me that it is somewhat gratifying in one sense, considering this individual's status, as it does justify just how refined my work actually is. But really, in truth, it's a terrible injustice of nothing more than pride and contempt on behalf of the violator.
On the positive, your speech, Holistic Ethics for Psychosis, was passed on to Steven Spielberg. That's a huge acknowledgement and a very fortunate opening that does not happen to the average Joe Blow every day, who has no connection to start with, even for someone in your position. They obviously found your work good enough to forward on to him.
I love Steven Spielberg. He's been my hero ever since I was a small boy. So it was the surprise of my life when I got the early morning phone call from his assistant. And I think she could tell straight away just how happy I was. And they called me only a month after me sending it off to them. But for that whole month I laid in bed at night thinking about it, whether or not it will get through to him or not. So yes, I was so happy when I got the call from DreamWorks and they told me the news.
What did you do after the phone call?
The first thing I did was go upstairs to the lounge room and flood my joy even further by listening to my favourite piece of music full ball, deafening the entire house. The beautiful, majestic theme to Jurassic Park. That was 2 years ago now, and I still tell all my American customers at work about it, just to keep the connection there.
That's great. So, all up, you've now written
8 books, with another 4 in draft on the shelf.
That's quite an accomplishment, given your history and only being 32.
Thank you.
But before your writing flame took spark, you were also a gifted artist and painter.
Yes, I've always been strong at art and drawing right from an early age. I've always had a sharp eye for detail, and capturing reality to how it presented itself is what I like to draw the most. The hardest of all things is to capture someone's face to how they actually look in real life. When someone looks at your work and says, "Oh, that's so-and-so," you know you've done a good portrait. My favourite portrait is of English actress Louise Lombard. Although she looks a little sad, there is a certain grace about her expression, and it shows how she actually looked in her mid-20s.
So this is what she looks like?
Well, I actually met Louise when she was performing at Hampstead Theatre in London, and I gave her the portrait as a present. She said it was very good and she liked it very much.
You met her?
Yes, meeting Louise is one of my happiest happy thoughts, along with Mr. Spielberg. I just regret never getting my photo taken with her. But as much as I like my portrait of Louise, my painting of Christopher Reeves as Superman is my favourite of all my paintings. I call it Godspeed Superman. He looks very determined in the portrait, as if to make it to the next rescue. Christopher was truly an inspiring human being, and I think we will all remember him as the real Superman he always was, and always will be. Excelsior, the most beautiful, graceful and majestic design of all the starships of Star Trek so far, I was commissioned to paint for my mum's boss, who at the time wanted a painting of the Starship Enterprise in the foyer of his office.
Why was that?
His business was called Enterprise Systems.
Very appropriate.
Yes, but technically speaking, I don't think he could tell the difference between Excelsior and Enterprise. To the uninitiated, all Star Trek starships look the same and have the same features, just varying in style and dynamics. But I've also designed my own Starship Enterprise.
You have actually designed your own Starship Enterprise?
Yes, as a result of my horror and embarrassment from seeing the ugly designs of Enterprise D when they first came out. I designed my enterprise back in 1993 when I was recovering from my first episode of schizophrenia. It was one of the things that relaxed me and took my mind off things. It was very therapeutic for me to get my concentration back. Surprisingly, a few years after, I discovered that the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, died on my birthday in 1991, United Nations Day. In some sentimental way, I feel Gene is looking over me, and eventually I sent my designs to Mrs. Roddenberry.
What did she think of them? Did you get a reply?
Yes, I did. She liked them very much, and she added them to the Star Trek archives. Willpower is my screenplay poster artwork, showing Will's spiritual eye opening up before the sunrise. P-51 Mustang I painted back in high school, inspired from that magical flyby in Steven Spielberg's Empire of the Sun. Cadillac of the Sky, I call it, after the movie. These are my favourites.
As a result of your writing flame and creativity, you have also produced numerous audio CDs and have made various short films and documentaries.
Yes, Enlightenment Explained outlines how such an experience is possible and what it is actually like, how it actually feels. My autobiography, Awakening, also features as an audio CD. The first documentary I made was of my speech, Holistic Ethics for Psychosis, which we have seen clips of already. My second short was an animation called Universality, the Mystic Unity of Life, a universal zoom through space, starting at a point on Earth that ventures outwards continuously to the ends of the universe and beyond, with a clever twist at the end showing the inner and the outer worlds not to be separate. And I've just finished making my latest short film that is called The Marks of a Mystic, which outlines the mystic temperament and how that evokes a person's disposition after experiencing spiritual unity. I also have my own website which features all my works from over the years at www.freeman33.com.
So what do you hope for out of all this?
To pass on my knowledge, wisdom and insights to help and inspire others achieve what I have in terms of recovery. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is I just wish everyone who is unwell with the illness was as well as me. And secondly, just as important, to educate society about the unified nature of reality, the bigger picture and real meaning of life.
In a few short answers, who's your favourite person?
I have 5. Mum, Steven Spielberg, Jules, Louise Lombard, and Wayne Teasdale.
Favourite book?
The Mystic Heart by Wayne.
Favourite movie?
Ben-Hur and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Favourite song?
I have 2. Search for the hero inside yourself and Things Can Only Get Better. But above all, my favourite piece of music is the main theme to Jurassic Park. It sounds like the music God would have played when he first created the universe.
Favourite quote?
Again, 2. Imagination is more important than knowledge, by Albert Einstein. And they died saving my life. The very last words spoken by Anthony Hopkins' character at the end of his film, The Edge.
Favourite thought?
Meeting Louise Lombard and how I might meet Steven Spielberg.
What is your motto?
Kindness restores unity.
Aspirations?
As nerve-wracking as it is, I'm very keen to continue my new endeavour of public speaking on the international circuit, to get my message out there, to help and inspire others.
I can see why.
Yes. I also hope to find a well-established literary agent to secure my works with, and ultimately to become published mainstream. And as always, I hope to meet Mr. Spielberg one day. But above all, my greatest desire is that I wish for everyone to become self-realised, to realise unity.
Pretty big aspiration, Spencer.
Yes, aim high, I've always believed.
And final words?
Firstly, recovery from schizophrenia is a very real reality. I am living proof of that. So to everyone out there who is looking for hope in recovery, don't let anyone ever tell you otherwise. You can get well again and be that person you always used to be, and lead a healthy, normal life again. Secondly, never let anyone, whether society, media, or even qualified psychiatrists, address you as a schizophrenic. If they do, put them back in their place by telling them that first and foremost, you are a human being just like them, and you are only contending with the illness that is called schizophrenia. The illness is not who you truly are. Just like any illness in life, it limits us from being who and what we truly are, and always will be. The illness is not a true quality of your original identity, so never let anyone get away with addressing you as a schizophrenic. Stand up for your human rights and human dignity, and put them back in their place of equality with you. The gentle mystic of the Beatles, George Harrison, proclaimed on his deathbed, "The greatest achievement of a human being, above all other things in life, is to realise God." So in to salute to George and all the other mystics gone before us, I would like to close with one of my oldest and most favourite verses of insight, which I wrote at the start of my writing vocation. It's an oldie but a goodie, and it's called Unity. Amongst all our variety and differences, we are all founded in unity. We are all the same, we are all human beings, we are all one. We all live on the same planet, in the same star system, the same galaxy, the same universe, the same creation, the same spirit, the same creating consciousness, the same creator. We are all the same, we are all one, the one.